Welcome back to Cindy's Library. This is Cindy, and today I'm going to talk about my reading so far for the month of July. So let's get started, shall we? First of all, I read the next two books in the case files of Henry Davenport, Three Charges for Murders, and Grimories and Where to Find Them. A little hard to say too much about these, except in book 5, this is book 4. No, this is book 5. In this one, there is indeed a murder, and there are 3 charms involved that in the end do give a bit of a clue about how and why, Grimories, and where to find them. This one I find particularly fun because here we get into the wacky world of rare book dealing and collecting. And there have even been some criminals who have collected rare books. It's pretty obvious fairly quickly in here that's exactly what is happening, except he's collecting grimories, which are basically books that are magical and about magic. In particular, well, let's just say very bad things can happen when grimories are not properly taken care of, and there's no indication that our thief knows how to take care of grimories. So, what are our heroes, Jamie and Henry, going to do about this? Very fun. Next, Paradise Lost. I got through it. Yes, it is the basic story of the fall and of the creation beforehand. A lot of, shall we say, speculation on Milton's part. But it is an interesting thought experiment. How did all of this actually happen? I mean, we had the Genesis account, of course, and that tells us a few things, but it leaves a lot to the imagination. And Milton definitely has an imagination. It's his writing style. Everyone pretty much knew from the beginning, at least since the time Milton was at college. I think he was in Oxford, I could be wrong about that. When he was at college, everyone knew he was going to be an amazing poet. And that is because, well, he is. He also, though, kind of forces his attention on you a bit. He makes you work. And granted, what he wrote as a very young man is very different from this. A lot happened between those 2 points of history. When he was a young man, it was still very much the Elizabethan age. I mean, Queen Elizabeth, I think, had died, but still very similar. We hadn't gone through the Glorious Revolution or the Restoration. Paradise Lost was written after all of those events, and so Milton was very much a different person by then. So there is that too. I also say some people think Satan is the hero of Paradise Lost. I mean, he has some grand speeches, especially at the beginning. Not denying that. But I mean, by the last we see of him, He's basically a snake, or maybe even a worm, and he's forced to stay that way. Doesn't sound very heroic to me. And if you look at what he actually says, I mean, it sounds good, but there are a few problems with his thinking, to say the least. So I finally got that done. Gulliver's Travels did not count for ancientsathon, which is only being done unofficially this year, but Paradise Lost did count for ancientsathon, so got it done. Only a week into July, but I got it done. Next, Jane Austen July. Group read was Sense and Sensibility, so I decided why not read the Manga Classics edition. Not sure this is the favorite art I've seen in Manga Classic, but it's very fun. I do not suggest this as a replacement for the original, but it's a fun adaptation. And of course, yes, I did read the original. I still love Sense and Sensibility, the story of two sisters who love each other but are extremely different. You have Eleanor and you have Marianne. Eleanor's very much more practical. Marianne is very, very romantic in the 18th century meaning of that word. And it's a very interesting contrast. Some great characters in here. Some of the best side characters outside of Pride and Prejudice, I think. And yeah, it's just a great time. If you haven't read Sense and Sensibility or you don't like it because the romances are weak, the two male leads are weak, well, yeah. There's a third one, but that's complicated. But the two, all of that is true. But that's not what Jane Austen is doing here, writing a romance. She's writing a tale about sisters and contrasting them. And from that perspective, it is amazing. I also managed, this is not what I was planning to read for my nonfiction. Can't get into what I did plan. So, A Portrait of Jane Austen by David Cecil. He is the one, I think I read it last year. His address about Jane Austen, I think it was back in the 1940s. This one, 1978. So it looks like the original copyright. Now, of course, this is greatly expanded. It goes through Jane Austen's life. Of course, the thing is, we don't have a lot. Not Jane Austen, she did not talk a huge amount about her writing process, unlike some authors. And some of the letters we might have been most interested in seeing, her sister Cassandra burned after her death. So it's rather limited what we have. And she also seems to have been a pretty private person. But David Cecil does what he can between her writings, even though she's hardly an autobiographical author, and the way, say, Charlotte Bronte was with Jane Eyre or Villette. She still does reveal a few things, and obviously she knew what she was talking about, like, for example, going to Bath or going to Lyme Regis because she had been there herself. And we do have historical documentation about things like that. But in short, what David Cecil puts together is a very lovely, sharp, good 18th century woman who in some ways was more the 17th century, the world of Samuel Johnson and such. So I'm glad I read this. Much easier style than what I was trying to get through. This, sure, there's been new ideas and new discoveries since this was written. And as you can see, it's not particularly long, but for a good basis to start, this would be a good one. Especially since David Cecil was connected with the Inklings. Oop. Knocked that over. Oh well. Anyway, that is how my Jane Austen July has been going so far. Oh, that is right. I also got through my fiction related to Jane Austen. So I read The Darcy Skip a Ball by Elizabeth Newark. It is slight. It is not long at all. And yeah, there could have been some more development in some ways, but it was still very fun. We start maybe 10 years, or is it 15 years? Either way, after Pride and Prejudice, and Mr. Collins, who finally gets Longbourn upon Mr. Bennet's passing. Then we skip ahead to 25 years after Pride and Prejudice, and we get some ideas about what has happened to everyone. And one of those things is Darcy's second son, Henry. He stops, not Highbury, the little town where the Bennets lived, where Longbourn is, Meryton. He stops there, stops by Longbourn on his way back from Oxford, feels he should since they're related, and he meets the youngest Collins' daughter, Eliza, and of course is immediately smitten. Now, Mr. Darcy and Elizabeth are not necessarily thrilled about this. I mean, Charlotte is an amazing woman, but Mr. Collins, and they want to make sure that Henry, he has his eyes open in making any decisions so important as matrimony. In the meantime, their youngest daughter, I forget what her name is, but she's just coming out herself. So they decide, why not have a ball and let them meet all sorts of people. And so at the ball, all sorts of people come. Mostly relatives. Georgiana and her family come. Colonel Fitzwilliam, his family come. The Brandons come. Wentworths come. What? The Knightleys come, and others come. And by the end, well, let's just say disaster is averted and everything ends up the way it should. It's such a slight book, we don't get very much except from Charlotte's point of view, which is great. And we get especially from Henry and Eliza's point of view. Those are probably the most prominent of the next generation, but I wish we had more. But for what it is, it's very fun. So, that is my Jane Austen July so far. How's yours been going? I hope it has been going just as well. Thank you so much for stopping by. I truly do appreciate it. So until next time, I hope we all stay safe and healthy, and as always, happy reading.